I had 60 seconds left to clear my desk when Arthur Elsworth, the Billionaire CEO, stood at the head of the boardroom table and announced my termination to 47 executives. Instead of crying or begging, I smiled and said, "Thank you for the clarity." That's when Quinn Gray, our Chief Operations Officer, quietly stood up. Then Nate Portman from Finance. One by one, 38 executives rose from their chairs and walked toward the door. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're a subscriber, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Arthur's face went from red to white in about 5 seconds. His new protégé, Cailee Storm, stopped smiling real fast. But I should probably explain how a regular Tuesday morning turned into the biggest corporate walkout in our industry's history. I'm standing at my desk on the executive floor, cardboard box in hand, while Arthur's voice echoes through the glass-walled boardroom. 60 seconds, Greta. Security is waiting. My hands are steady as I pack 6 years of work, project binders, my coffee mug with the chipped handle, the photo of our team after we closed the Meridian deal. The boardroom is silent except for the sound of my desk drawer closing. Through the glass walls, I can see the entire 11th floor frozen, watching this corporate execution play out in real time. Cailee sits in my chair, examining her nails like she's already won. Arthur keeps glancing at his Patek Philippe watch, probably the same one he wore when he told me I was part of the family during my welcome dinner 6 years ago. 6 years ago, I joined Elsworth Media Group as their director of digital strategy. We were a mid-tier marketing conglomerate struggling to compete with the big agencies that had the fancy offices and the celebrity client lists. Arthur hired me away from a competitor, promised me autonomy and growth. "You're the best in the business, Greta. Help me build something that matters." I believed him because back then, he seemed genuine, hungry but ethical, ambitious but fair. I moved across the country for this job, left my entire network behind, broke my lease and drove 18 hours with everything I owned packed into a Honda Civic that barely made it up the mountain pass. Within 2 years, I'd tripled our digital revenue and landed clients nobody thought we could get. The monthly executive dinners at Arthur's penthouse in downtown became a ritual I both loved and dreaded. His wife, Abigail Elsworth, always played hostess, perfectly polished, perfectly distant, the kind of woman who could make "how nice to see you" sound like a threat. These dinners felt like tests disguised as celebrations. Arthur would hold court at the head of his custom dining table that seated 20, sharing his vision, while everyone nodded and murmured agreement. I'd contributed real ideas, actual strategy, but he'd reframe them as his own by dessert. Abigail once told me, cornering me by the wine bar while everyone else was distracted, "You're very driven for someone so young. Just remember, ambition without grace can be off-putting." I smiled and thanked her for the advice, not realizing it was a warning about knowing my place in their world. Year 4 was our breakthrough year, the one where everything I'd been building finally clicked into place. I led the pitch that won us the Garrison Tech account, $18 million annually, the biggest deal in company history at that point. I built out an entire influencer division from scratch that became our fastest growing segment, going from 0 to 12 million in revenue in 18 months. My team grew from 8 people to 43. Industry publications started calling me for interviews. Arthur loved it when the company got press, but his smile got tighter when my name appeared in the articles more than his did. "Remember, Greta, you're representing Elsworth Media. Not building a personal brand." The warning was casual, delivered while we were walking out of a client meeting, but the edge in his voice was unmistakable. 6 months ago, Cailee Storm arrived as a special consultant. 26 years old, MBA from somewhere expensive, 0 real-world experience unless you counted internships at her father's hedge fund. Arthur introduced her at an all-hands meeting with the kind of enthusiasm he usually reserved for landing major clients. "Cailee brings fresh perspective. She'll be shadowing our senior leaders to learn our culture and contribute to our strategic evolution." She shadowed me specifically, sat in my meetings, asked to review my presentations, requested access to client files and campaign archives. "I just want to understand your process," she'd say with this wide-eyed innocence that I mistook for genuine curiosity. I mentored her because that's what good leaders do, right? You bring people up, you share knowledge, you build the next generation. I taught her our pitch methodology, introduced her to clients, explained our campaign architecture and client relationship management. She took notes in a leather portfolio that probably cost more than my first car. Quinn pulled me aside 2 months ago at the holiday party, catching my arm while I was heading to the bar. Be careful with Cailee. She's not just learning from you, she's studying you. Like you're a specimen. I laughed it off, loosened by 2 glasses of champagne and the high of closing another major deal. She's just eager. Remember when we were that hungry? Quinn didn't laugh back. Her face was serious, almost worried. We were hungry for success. She's hungry for position. There's a difference, Greta. Trust me on this. Nate from finance mentioned something similar a week later when we were reviewing budget allocations. She's been asking about your compensation structure, your client origination credits, even your vacation time. That's weird, right? Why would a consultant need that information? I dismissed it as due diligence, maybe prep for her own role definition once the consulting period ended. Looking back, they were building a case, and I was handing them the evidence with a smile and detailed explanations. 5 weeks ago, our largest client, Meridian Industries, threatened to walk. Their new CMO hated our latest campaign, called it derivative and uninspired, during a video call where I watched our account director's face go pale. It was the campaign Cailee had collaborated on after Arthur insisted she contribute more meaningfully to client-facing work. I spent 72 hours rebuilding the entire strategy from the ground up. My team worked around the clock, Quinn coordinating operations and managing client communications, Nate restructuring the budget to accommodate the emergency pivot, our creative director Paul Gray redesigning everything with about 4 hours of sleep total. We saved the account with a presentation that the CMO called exactly what we needed, bold, strategic, actually innovative. Arthur sent a company-wide email praising the save. Cailee's name appeared 4 times in that email, credited with collaborative leadership and strategic insights. Mine appeared once, in the sign-off, grouped with the rest of the team. This morning started wrong from the moment I badged into the building. Leo Rodriguez, our usually chatty security guard who always asked about my weekend and showed me photos of his grandkids, barely made eye contact. Just a quick nod and a morning that came out like an apology. The elevator felt too quiet, like everyone was holding their breath or knew something I didn't. When I reached the 11th floor, I saw Cailee coming out of Arthur's office. She was smiling, but not at me, through me, like I was already invisible. Big day, she said, walking past, her heels clicking on the marble floor with a rhythm that sounded almost triumphant. I had a board presentation scheduled for 10 a.m., my quarterly results review that I'd been preparing for weeks. 18 months of consecutive growth, 3 major client wins, a division I'd built from nothing into the company's most profitable segment. I thought I was presenting my success. Turns out, I was attending my execution. I walked into the boardroom at 9:55 a.m., laptop bag over my shoulder, ready to present 18 months of consecutive growth. Cailee was already there, sitting in my seat, the one facing away from the window glare that I'd claimed 3 years ago because it was the only spot where you could actually see your screen during morning meetings. Her laptop was open to my presentation deck, the one I'd spent 3 weeks perfecting, complete with the custom animations and client testimonials I'd gathered personally. Oh, Greta. Arthur asked me to review these numbers before the meeting. You don't mind, right? It wasn't a question, and we both knew it. I stood there, watching her scroll through slides about my division's performance, my client wins, my team's growth metrics. The room started filling up, CFO, COO, VPs from every department. Nobody was making eye contact with me. Quinn walked in, saw Cailee in my seat, and her jaw tightened. She mouthed, "What's happening?" I had no answer. Arthur arrived 7 minutes late, which never happened. The man treated punctuality like a religion, once firing someone for being consistently 3 minutes behind schedule. He looked different, his tie was slightly crooked, his usually perfect silver hair had a piece out of place. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. He wasn't carrying his normal leather portfolio with its monogrammed initials. He was carrying a single manila folder, the kind HR uses for termination paperwork. "Let's get started," he said, not looking at me. No greeting, no good morning, nothing. He sat at the head of the table and opened the folder. I could see papers inside, documents I didn't recognize, definitely not my presentation materials. My presentation remote felt slippery in my hand. "Greta, before you begin, we need to address some concerns that have come to my attention." My stomach dropped like I was on a roller coaster that had just lost its track. Concerns about what? Arthur slid a paper across the polished table, an email chain I'd never seen before. The subject line read, "Meridian account, unauthorized client contact." The sender was Cailee. "Can you explain why you went around established protocol to contact Meridian's CMO directly?" I stared at the email, trying to process what I was reading. The timestamp showed it was sent 2 weeks ago, while I was literally saving the Meridian account from walking. "I saved that account." "You sent a company-wide email praising the save." My voice was steady, but I could feel my pulse in my throat. The save that required breaking chain of command, undermining Cailee's work, and creating client confusion, Arthur said, his tone flat like he'd practiced this conversation in the mirror. Cailee sat there, her face arranged in what I guess was supposed to be concern, but her eyes were bright, alive, victorious. This was her moment and she was savoring it. Arthur pulled out more papers, spreading them across the table like he was dealing cards. Expense reports I'd filed, now with yellow highlights on every client dinner, every rideshare to late meetings, every coffee with prospects. "Your spending's gotten out of control. The board's asking questions I can't answer." These were the same expenses I'd been filing for 6 years, the same client entertainment that landed us $1 million contracts. The same dinners Arthur himself had encouraged me to host. FaceTime matters, Greta. Build those relationships. Nate from finance was staring at his notepad, refusing to look up. He'd approved every single one of those reports without question until apparently, right now. "There's also the matter of team morale," Arthur continued, pulling out another document. "Several members of your division have expressed concerns about your management style. Demanding. Inflexible. Creating a high-pressure environment that's leading to burnout." I felt like I'd been punched. Who? Which team members? My team loved working with me. We had the lowest turnover in the company. "That's confidential," Arthur said, closing that line of questioning like a door slamming shut. Of course it was confidential. Probably because it didn't exist. I looked around the room, 47 executives, most of whom I'd worked with for years. Some looked uncomfortable, shifting in their expensive chairs. Others looked away, suddenly fascinated by their phones or the view outside. A few looked almost sympathetic, like they were watching a car crash they couldn't prevent. But nobody was speaking up. Nobody was saying, "Wait, this doesn't make sense." Nobody was defending me or questioning the obvious setup happening in real time. "Look, Greta, the board's lost confidence. We need to go in a different direction." Arthur's voice had that rehearsed quality, probably vetted by legal to avoid a wrongful termination suit. "A change in direction, or a change in leadership?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Both." Cailee shifted in my chair, her chair now, apparently, and I saw it. The smallest smile pulling at the corner of her mouth. She couldn't quite hide it. "Cailee will be taking over your role, effective immediately. She's shown innovative thinking and the kind of collaborative leadership that fits better with where we're going." The words sounded like they came from a corporate memo written by someone who'd never actually worked a real job. Half a decade of 60-hour weeks, of saved accounts, of built teams, of sacrificed weekends and missed birthdays and skipped vacations were being erased in real time. "Are you serious right now? My division's grown 340% in 4 years. We just posted our best quarter on record." I wasn't yelling, but my voice had an edge now. Which makes this the perfect time for transition, Arthur said smoothly. We can build on what you started with fresh energy. What I started? Fresh energy. Corporate speak for, we're erasing you and pretending someone else did the work. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Against every instinct, against every rule of boardroom etiquette I'd followed for years, I glanced at it. A text from Quinn, check your email. Now. Personal account. Arthur was still talking, something about transition timelines and severance packages and how this was really better for everyone involved. I pulled out my phone fully, no longer caring about boardroom etiquette or Arthur's disapproving stare. My personal email had a new message from an address I didn't recognize, just a string of random letters and numbers. The subject line, you need to see this. Inside was a forwarded email chain between Arthur and Cailee. Dated 4 months ago. Subject, succession planning, digital division. My hands went cold as I read it. Cailee has been shadowing Greta as discussed. Documenting processes and client relationships. Building rapport with key accounts. She'll be ready to assume the role by Q2. Another email, dated 3 months ago, transition timeline looking good. Cailee has secured buy-in from Garrison Tech CMO. They're comfortable with leadership change. Another one from 6 weeks ago, need to establish performance concerns for documentation. Legal recommends paper trail for clean separation. I looked up from my phone, directly at Arthur. His face had gone red, and I could see his jaw clenching. He knew I'd found something. He knew the script had just been thrown out. You have 60 seconds to clear your desk, Greta. Security will escort you out. The room went silent. Not 60 days of notice. Not 2 weeks to transition my accounts. 60 seconds. Like I was a criminal caught stealing, not an executive who'd built a significant part of his company from scratch. You're firing me? I asked, even though the answer was obvious. I needed to hear him say it in front of all these witnesses. We're ending your employment, effective immediately, due to performance concerns and breach of company protocol. Every word was chosen carefully, probably vetted by legal to avoid wrongful termination claims. Performance concerns from the division with the highest growth. Breach of protocol for saving a client he'd praised me for saving. This was character assassination dressed up as corporate restructuring, and everyone in this room knew it. That's when I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because suddenly everything made perfect sense. The smile seemed to confuse Arthur more than anger would have. He'd probably rehearsed this whole scene expecting tears or shouting, maybe some desperate pleading that would make him feel powerful. Instead, I felt this weird calm wash over me, like I'd been holding my breath for months and finally remembered I could exhale. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. Thank you for the clarity. His face went darker, almost purple. That wasn't in his script either. I stood up slowly, deliberately, and started packing my laptop into its bag. Through the glass walls of the boardroom, I could see my team at their desks. Paul was staring at his screen but not moving his mouse. Quinn was standing now, phone in her hand but not looking at it, she was looking at me. The entire 11th floor had gone silent, like someone had hit a pause button on the usual Tuesday morning chaos of phone calls and keyboard clicks and the coffee machine hissing in the break room. Security is waiting downstairs, Arthur said, trying to regain control of the situation. Tom will escort you to your desk. You have 60 seconds to collect personal items only. All company property stays. I zipped my laptop bag and slung it over my shoulder. I know the drill, Arthur. Though I've got to say, usually when you fire executives, you at least have the decency to do it privately. But I guess that's the difference between us. I actually respected the people I worked with. Cailee's smile faltered. She hadn't expected me to fight back, even verbally. Arthur stood up, trying to use his height to intimidate me the way he'd probably intimidated hundreds of people before. Your bitterness is exactly why this decision was necessary. You're not a team player, Greta. You never were. The statement was so absurd I almost laughed. Not a team player. I'd built the team. I'd hired most of the people on this floor. I'd gone to bat for their raises and their promotions and their work-life balance when Arthur wanted everyone working weekends for free. I walked toward the door, and that's when Tom Rodriguez appeared. Head of security, who'd worked here for 15 years. I'd gotten his daughter an internship in our creative department 3 summers ago. She was in college now, studying marketing because of that internship. "I'm sorry about this," he said quietly, not quite meeting my eyes. "Don't be," I told him. "You're just doing your job. Unlike some people in that room, you actually have integrity." We walked through the executive floor toward my desk, and I could feel every eye on me. This was meant to be humiliating, the perp walk, the public shaming, the message to everyone else about what happens when you displease Arthur Elsworth. But something was happening that Arthur hadn't planned for. Quinn stood up from her desk. Just stood up, laptop already closed, bag already on her shoulder like she'd been expecting this. Nate from finance pushed his chair back and started shutting down his computer. Not frantically, not in a panic, calmly, deliberately, like he'd made a decision and was following through. "What are you doing?" Arthur's voice came from behind me, sharp with confusion. He'd followed me out of the boardroom, Cailee trailing behind him looking less confident now. Quinn looked directly at him. "I'm leaving." No explanation, no speech, just a simple statement of fact. Nate unplugged his monitors and started packing his bag. "Me too." Paul from creative got to his feet. Then Sarah from account management. Then the Morrison twins who ran our analytics division and literally finished each other's sentences. I reached my desk and started opening drawers, pulling out the few personal items I kept here. A framed photo of my parents. The backup drive where I stored everything important because I'd learned early in my career to never trust company servers completely. My favorite pen that I'd bought myself when I landed the Garrison Tech account. Arthur was standing in the middle of the floor now, watching his executive team systematically shut down and pack up. "This is insane. Everyone sit down. Now." His voice had that edge of panic that happens when people who are used to absolute control suddenly realize they have none. But nobody sat down. More people were rising now, and I realized Quinn had been texting while I was in that boardroom. She'd warned them. She'd given them time to decide whether they were going to watch this happen or do something about it. Archie Webb from our media buying team stood up. Rachel from client services. The entire digital strategy team, all 12 people I'd hired and trained myself. They were all standing now, all packing up, all preparing to walk out. "If you leave this building, you're terminated," Arthur said, his voice rising. "Every single one of you. You'll lose your severance, your benefits, everything." Quinn laughed, actually laughed, and it echoed across the silent floor. "Bold move threatening people who are already quitting, Arthur. Really shows that brilliant strategic thinking you're famous for." More people rose from their desks. Not just my division now, people from finance, from operations, from departments I barely interacted with. 47 people had been in that boardroom watching my execution. Apparently, 38 of them had decided they didn't want to work for someone who operated like that. I finished packing the container, all those years reduced to what I could carry in my arms. A box that Tom had somehow produced, probably kept a stack of them in his office for exactly these occasions. The photo of my team after the Meridian save sat on top, all of us laughing and exhausted and proud of what we'd accomplished together. I picked it up and started walking toward the elevator. I didn't look back at Arthur or Cailee or the boardroom. I just walked. And behind me, I heard it. The sound of chairs moving, bags zipping, laptops closing. The sound of 38 people making the same choice at the same time. Tom walked beside me, and I could see him smiling slightly even though he was trying to hide it. "In 15 years, he said quietly as we waited for the elevator, "I've never seen anything like this." The elevator doors opened to the lobby and we walked out into the morning sunshine streaming through the glass walls. Maria at the front desk stood up so fast her coffee sloshed over the rim of her mug. We filed past 39 people who'd just walked away from 6-figure salaries and stock options and the security of a major company. someone in the lobby started clapping. I couldn't see who, maybe another security guard, maybe someone from the mailroom. Then others joined in until the sound echoed off the marble floors and glass walls. As we stood outside in the plaza, I glanced back through the glass doors. Abigail Elsworth was standing by the elevators in the lobby, watching us. She wasn't supposed to be here on Tuesdays. Our eyes met for just a second, and something in her expression looked almost like relief. Before I could process it, Quinn pulled my attention away. We stood in the plaza between the building and the parking garage, blinking in the bright sunlight, phones exploding with notifications. Nobody seemed to know what to do next. We'd just quit our jobs in the most dramatic way possible, and now we were standing in a corporate plaza at 10:30 on a Tuesday morning like we'd just survived something intense and weren't quite sure if we were heroes or idiots. The drive home took 23 minutes and I watched the clock the entire time because focusing on something concrete kept me from thinking about what I'd just done. My phone sat in the passenger seat having what I can only describe as an electronic meltdown. Buzzing, dinging, lighting up with notifications so fast the screen never went dark. 3 times I reached for it at red lights. 3 times I pulled my hand back. Whatever was happening could wait until I wasn't operating a vehicle. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it this morning. Coffee mug still in the sink, laptop charger plugged into the wall waiting for a laptop that was now in my bag instead of on Arthur's desk. The normalcy of it felt surreal. Like I should have returned to a different apartment, a different life, because surely everything had changed. I set the box on my kitchen counter and finally looked at my phone. 67 notifications. Text messages, emails, LinkedIn alerts, missed calls. The first text was from Quinn, sent while I was still driving, my place. 2 p.m. Everyone's coming. We need to figure this out. I scrolled through the others. Messages from people congratulating me, people asking what happened, people from other companies I'd worked with years ago saying they'd heard something big went down at Elsworth Media. 3 voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. I played the first one while unpacking, setting my parents' photo on the counter where I could see it. Greta, this is Catherine Walsh from Meridian Industries. I just got a very interesting call from our CMO. Call me back. Today. Her voice was clipped, professional, but there was something else underneath it, curiosity maybe, or opportunity. The second voicemail was from a reporter at Adweek asking for a comment on the mass resignation at Elsworth Media Group. Mass resignation. Is that what we were calling it? The third voicemail made me sit down. Ms. Greta, this is Jennifer Park from Park & Associates. I'm an employment attorney specializing in wrongful termination and corporate misconduct. I was contacted by someone who claims to have witnessed what happened at Elsworth this morning. I'd like to discuss your options. This kind of public termination, especially if there's evidence it was planned, can be very valuable from a legal standpoint. Call me. She left her number and hung up. I was staring at my phone, trying to process the concept of very valuable from a legal standpoint, when it rang again. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. Is this Greta? A woman's voice, slightly shaky, like she'd been crying or was about to start. Yes. Who is this? There was a pause, the sound of a door closing, then running water like she'd turned on a faucet for privacy. It's Abigail. Abigail Elsworth. Arthur's wife. The woman who'd warned me about ambition without grace over wine and canapés. I don't think we should be talking, I said, already wondering if this call was being recorded. Probably not, she agreed. But I'm calling anyway because someone needs to tell you what you're actually dealing with. More running water, then her voice dropped lower. Arthur's termination clause. The one in his executive contracts. Did you ever read yours carefully? I tried to remember signing paperwork 6 years ago, legal documents I'd skimmed because I was young and excited and trusted that everything was standard. Not really. Why? There's a clause about hostile termination. If someone gets fired publicly, in front of everyone, without good reason, the severance gets way bigger. I know because I'm the one who insisted, he added after he pulled this same stunt with his VP of sales 4 years ago. Man had a heart attack 6 months later from the stress and humiliation. Her voice was matter-of-fact, like she was reciting a grocery list instead of describing someone's medical crisis. Arthur never reads the full contracts anymore. He just signs where legal tells him to sign. But that provision is there, in your contract, and based on what I heard happened this morning, you have a case. I stood up, pacing my small living room. Why are you telling me this? Abigail laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Because I'm done watching him destroy people. Because our daughter quit speaking to him last year after he humiliated her boyfriend at a family dinner. Because I've been married to him for 28 years and I'm tired of being part of his cruelty. And honestly, because watching you train your own replacement for 6 months while he planned your execution was the final straw. That's not business. That's sadistic. She gave me the name of her personal attorney, made me promise to call, and hung up before I could ask any follow-up questions. I stood there holding my phone, trying to understand why Arthur's own wife had just handed me ammunition to use against him. My laptop dinged with an email notification. The sender was an address I didn't recognize, a string of numbers and letters that looked randomly generated. Subject line, "You're going to want to see this." I almost deleted it as spam, but something made me open it. Inside was a video file. Boardroom security footage from this morning, crystal clear, with audio. The timestamp showed it starting 5 minutes before I walked into that boardroom. I watched Arthur and Cailee rehearsing. Actually rehearsing my firing like it was a play. When she brings up the Meridian save, redirect to protocol violations, Arthur was saying. Cailee nodded, sitting in my chair, practicing her concerned expression. And if she asks about the performance concerns? Arthur shuffled papers. Just say it's confidential. Legal approved that language. She can't push back on confidential HR matters. They ran through the whole thing twice, adjusting their wording, timing their responses. Arthur even practiced his 60 seconds line, checking his watch for effect. The video ended with them both smiling, satisfied with their performance, completely unaware that every word was being recorded. A text appeared on my phone from the same random number that had sent the email, Tom Rodriguez from security. Thought you should have this. Been here 15 years. This was the worst thing I've ever seen. Good luck. I saved the video to 3 different locations, my laptop, my phone, the cloud. Then I forwarded it to the employment attorney whose voicemail I'd gotten. Then I just sat there on my couch in my apartment at 1:30 on a Tuesday afternoon, unemployed for the first time in my adult life, holding evidence of a conspiracy that was so blatant it almost seemed fake. My phone buzzed with a text from Quinn, "Don't forget. 2 p.m. My place. Bring wine. We're either planning a funeral or a revolution. Haven't decided which yet." I grabbed my keys and headed out, stopping at the liquor store on the way to buy the most expensive bottle of wine they had. If we were planning a revolution, we might as well do it properly. Quinn's apartment was in chaos when I arrived at 2:15, intentionally late because I'd learned that arriving early to anything meant you got stuck helping set up. Her living room looked like a corporate strategy session had collided with a college dorm party. 38 people crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment, sitting on every available surface, couch, chairs, floor, kitchen counter. Someone had ordered pizza. Multiple someones, apparently, because there were at least 10 boxes stacked on the dining table. Paul was setting up his laptop to screen share on Quinn's TV. Nate had a spreadsheet open, naturally, because Nate's response to any crisis was to make a spreadsheet about it. "She's here," Quinn announced when I walked in, and everyone turned to look at me like I had answers. I held up the wine bottle. I brought emotional support. That got a few laughs, broke some of the tension. I found a spot on the floor next to Sarah from account management, who was stress-eating pepperoni pizza and scrolling through her LinkedIn messages. "I've gotten 17 job offers in the last 3 hours, she said through a mouthful of cheese. 17. Companies I've never even heard of saying they want to talk. Same, Archie Webb from Media Buying chimed in from across the room. Got a recruiter from Apex Creative offering me 20% more than I was making. They called it a loyalty premium for walking out with you. Quinn pulled up her own LinkedIn on the TV, and I watched her notifications counter tick up in real time. 3,000 profile views in 4 hours. The mass walkout had gone viral, apparently. Someone had leaked it to industry blogs. Adweek already had an article up, Mass Exodus at Elsworth Media, 39 executives walk out following public termination. The comments section was ruthless. People sharing their own Arthur Elsworth horror stories, former employees coming out of the woodwork to talk about his management style, competitors making thinly veiled recruiting pitches in the replies. Okay, so what the hell do we do now? Quinn said, pulling everyone's attention back to the room. We all just quit our jobs in spectacular fashion. That was cathartic and probably very stupid, but it's done. So what now? Silence. Everyone looked at each other, probably realizing the same thing I'd been trying not to think about. We'd made a dramatic gesture with no actual plan for what came after. We start our own thing, Paul said from his spot by the TV. More silence, but this time it felt different. Less panicked, more thoughtful. Be serious, someone said. I am serious. Look at us. We're the entire leadership team of the most profitable division at Elsworth Media. We have the client relationships, the expertise, the reputation. Why would we split up and work for other people when we could work for ourselves? Nate was already typing, his spreadsheet brain shifting into gear. We'd need capital. Office space. Legal structure. Insurance. A client base. He paused, looked up. Actually, about that client base. I got a call from Garrison Tech an hour ago. Their CMO wants to talk. Said something about contracts following talent, not buildings. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out, Catherine Walsh from Meridian Industries returning my call. Hold on, I told the room. I need to take this. I stepped into Quinn's bedroom, closed the door. Catherine, hi. Got your message. Her voice was all business. Greta, I'm going to be direct because I don't have time for dancing around things. What happened this morning? I was terminated. Publicly. In front of the board. Given 60 seconds to clear my desk. I could hear her typing in the background. And 38 executives walked out with you. It wasn't a question. Yes. More typing, then a long pause. Here's the situation. Cailee Storm called me 2 hours ago to introduce herself as your successor and assure me there would be a seamless transition. She couldn't answer basic questions about our account. Didn't know our product launch timeline, couldn't name our target demographics, had no idea what campaign metrics we'd agreed on. It was embarrassing. I sat down on Quinn's bed, not sure where this was going. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Don't be sorry. Be ready to pitch me. Our contract with Elsworth Media is up for renewal in 45 days. If you're starting something new, I want to hear about it. And Greta? I'm not the only one. I've already gotten calls from 3 other CMOs asking if I'd heard what happened and what I was planning to do about it. The industry is watching this. She gave me her direct line, told me to call by end of week, and hung up. I walked back into the living room where everyone was now seriously discussing the logistics of starting an agency. Nate had numbers on the TV, startup costs, runway calculations, conservative revenue projections. Paul was sketching logo concepts on napkins. Someone had created a Slack channel called The Resistance and already had 20 people in it. Meridian wants to talk, I said, and the room went quiet. Catherine Walsh wants a pitch. Said other clients are reaching out to her asking what she's doing. Quinn stood up, grabbed the wine bottle I'd brought, opened it without bothering with a corkscrew, just pushed the cork down into the bottle like we were celebrating in a movie. That's not just a conversation. That's $18 million in annual revenue if we can close it. She poured wine into random cups and glasses people had grabbed from her kitchen. Here's what I think. We're already screwed if we do nothing. Might as well go down swinging and try to build something. Who's in? My phone rang again. The employment attorney, Jennifer Park. I answered, walking back into Quinn's bedroom for privacy. Ms. Greta, I've reviewed the footage you sent. This is one of the clearest cases of premeditated wrongful termination I've seen in 15 years of practice. The rehearsal alone is damning. Combined with the email evidence of succession planning without your knowledge, the public nature of the termination, and the hostile termination clause in your contract that his wife apparently confirmed exists, we're looking at significant damages. She paused. How significant are we talking? I asked, almost afraid of the answer. Conservative estimate? $800,000 in base severance according to your contract's hostile termination provision. But with documented emotional distress, reputational damage, and what we can argue is conspiracy to commit fraud, I think we can push for $3 million, maybe more. Especially if we can prove he did this to avoid paying you properly while stealing your client relationships. I sat down again, harder this time. $3 million. There's something else, Jennifer continued. Arthur Elsworth has done this before. Multiple times. I've started reaching out to former executives, and I'm finding a pattern. We might be looking at a class action situation. But your case is the strongest because you have video evidence and witnesses who walked out in protest. That's unprecedented. She wanted to meet tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. Her office downtown. I agreed and hung up, standing in Quinn's bedroom trying to process the fact that my terrible morning might have just turned into the worst thing that ever happened to me. When I walked back into the living room, Paul had finished an actual logo concept on his tablet. A stylized anvil with clean, modern lines. Forge Creative Group underneath in a font that looked professional but not corporate. It's good, Quinn said, studying it. It's really good. She looked around the room at 38 people who'd risked everything this morning. So we're really doing this? Starting an agency from scratch with no office, no infrastructure, and a bunch of angry executives? Nate pulled up his final spreadsheet on the TV. If we can close Meridian and Garrison Tech, we'd have $36 million in annual revenue. That's enough to operate, hire support staff, lease office space, and pay ourselves. It's tight but it's doable. He looked at me. Can you close them? I thought about Catherine Walsh's call, about the CMOs reaching out to each other, about the fact that Arthur had just handed us the world's best origin story. Yeah, I said. I think I can. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on Wednesday. I know the exact time because I'd finally fallen asleep around midnight after hours of lying in bed replaying the day, and my phone lighting up in the dark felt like an alarm going off during a fire drill. Unknown number, but something made me answer. Maybe instinct, maybe just the kind of exhaustion where you stop making rational decisions. Greta? A man's voice, stressed, almost panicked. It's Derek. Derek Clausen from IT. I know it's the middle of the night but you need to know what's happening. I sat up, turned on my bedside lamp. Derek Clausen had been Elsworth Media's IT director for 9 years. Quiet guy, kept to himself, but brilliant with systems architecture. He'd been in that boardroom Tuesday morning watching my execution. Derek, what's wrong? I could hear keyboard clicking in the background, that frantic kind of typing that happens when something's on fire and you're trying to put it out digitally. Kelly locked herself out of the client database. She was trying to access files to prepare for meetings today and she entered the wrong password too many times. Standard security protocol locked her out. I rubbed my eyes, trying to understand why this warranted a 3 a.m. phone call. Okay, so reset her password. That's a 5-minute fix. More typing, then Derek's voice dropped lower. That's what I tried to do. But she panicked. Started clicking things she shouldn't have clicked. She found some IT admin access that Arthur gave her, access she definitely shouldn't have had, and tried to override the security protocols herself. My stomach dropped. Derek, what did she do? She deleted everything. Not just her login, the entire authentication system. Every client login we've ever set up, every access credential, every security token we've issued in 7 years. It's gone. And then, he paused, and I could hear him taking a breath like he was steadying himself. Then she tried to restore it from backup using some recovery software she apparently downloaded off the internet. Greta, she corrupted the main client database. 17 years of client data. Contact information, project histories, contracts, billing records, everything. It's all corrupted. I was fully awake now, pacing my bedroom in my pajamas. How bad are we talking? Derek's laugh was slightly hysterical. We're talking complete system failure. East Coast operations have been dark for 6 hours. Nobody can access client files. Our biggest accounts, Garrison Tech, Riverdale Industries, the Patterson Group, they're all locked out of their portals. Their campaigns are supposed to go live this morning and we can't even access the files. Arthur's been in the office since midnight screaming at everyone. He threw his laptop at the wall. Actually threw it. There's a hole in the drywall now. I sat down on my bed, processing this. The client database wasn't just names and numbers. It was the entire operational backbone of Elsworth Media. Every relationship, every contract negotiation, every custom configuration for every client we'd ever had. Can you recover it? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Maybe. Partially. If we'd called in a professional recovery team immediately. But Kelly spent 4 hours trying to fix it herself, and every attempt made it worse. IT estimates minimum 2 weeks for even partial restoration. That's being optimistic. Some data is probably just gone forever. The clicking stopped. Derek's voice got quieter, like he was making sure nobody could hear him. Arthur wants me to call you. He's been screaming about it for the last hour. Wants you to come in and fix it. Told me to offer you whatever it takes. I told him I'd try to reach you, but honestly, I'm calling to tell you to run. This is a sinking ship and he's looking for someone to blame besides himself and his protégé. I started making coffee because clearly sleep wasn't happening anymore. How much are we talking in damages? Derek was quiet for a moment. Conservative estimate? 70 million in immediate losses. Client penalties for missed deadlines, breach of contract, data loss liability. That's not counting the clients we'll lose completely. Garrison Tech's CMO already called threatening legal action. Patterson Group is furious. And the industry press is going to have a field day when this gets out. When, not if? I asked, pouring coffee grounds into the filter. Oh, it's already out. Someone leaked it to Adweek about an hour ago. They're running with Elsworth Media in crisis after mass walkout. By morning, everyone's going to know that the company imploded within 24 hours of firing you. He paused. Greta, I'm putting in my notice today. I can't watch this anymore. Arthur created this disaster and he's trying to blame everyone except himself and the unqualified person he put in charge. He gave me his personal email, said he'd send over documentation of everything that happened, and hung up. I stood in my kitchen at 3 a.m. drinking coffee and watching my phone light up with messages. Someone had leaked Derek's name, and now IT people from Elsworth were texting me, calling me, emailing me asking if I'd heard what happened. Paul sent a message in our new Forge Creative Group Slack, everyone seeing this? Elsworth's entire infrastructure is down. This is bad. Quinn replied, this is karma. Nate, always the pragmatist, this is opportunity. Every client they're about to lose is a client we could gain. My phone rang again. This time I recognized the number. Arthur Elsworth. I stared at it for 3 rings, 4, 5. Let it go to voicemail. He called back immediately. I answered on the first ring this time, curious what he could possibly say. Greta. His voice was hoarse, probably from screaming at his remaining employees. We need to talk. I took a sip of coffee, let the silence stretch. Do we? His tone shifted, trying for conciliatory but landing somewhere near desperate. Look, mistakes were made. The transition could have been handled better. But right now, we have a crisis, and you're the only person who knows our systems well enough to fix this. I don't work for you anymore, Arthur. You gave me 60 seconds to clear my desk, remember? In front of 47 executives. Made quite a speech about performance concerns and protocol breaches. I could hear him breathing heavily, probably pacing his office. I'm prepared to offer you a consultant fee. $200,000 for 2 weeks of work. You come in, fix the databases, help transition everything properly, and then we go our separate ways. Clean break. $200,000. 24 hours ago, that would have been life-changing money. Now it felt insulting. Here's what I think happened, Arthur. You promoted someone unqualified to prove a point. You wanted to show that I was replaceable, that anyone could do my job with the right pedigree and the right connections. And now Cailee's destroyed 17 years of data trying to prove she deserved the position you handed her. More heavy breathing. How do you know about that? Someone talked. Obviously. Because people talk when they've been treated badly. And you've been treating people badly for a long time. I poured more coffee, surprised by how calm I felt. My answer is no. Fix your own mess. $300,000, he said quickly. 1 week. You don't even have to interact with Cailee. Just restore the systems and go. I laughed, actually laughed, and it felt good. Arthur, I'm starting my own agency. With 38 of your best executives. We already have meetings scheduled with Meridian and Garrison Tech. And based on what I'm hearing, they're already looking for a way out of their Elsworth contracts. So why would I spend a week saving your company when I could spend that week building mine? The silence on the other end was absolute. Then, quietly, almost a whisper, you planned this. It was such a ridiculous accusation I almost dropped my phone. I planned getting publicly humiliated and fired? No, Arthur. You planned that. I'm just dealing with the consequences. Turns out, when you treat people like they're disposable, sometimes they leave and take their value with them. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear. From adrenaline, from the reality of what was happening. 24 hours ago, I was an executive at a major agency. Now I was unemployed, possibly about to be rich from a lawsuit, and starting a company with 38 people who'd walked out with me. My phone buzzed with a text from Quinn. Please tell me you're not actually considering helping him. I replied, not in a million years. Her response was immediate, good. Because we have a pitch to write. Meridian wants to meet Friday. 3 days to put together the presentation of our lives. Quinn's apartment had become Forge Creative Group's unofficial headquarters by Thursday morning, though calling it headquarters was generous. It was more like a war room designed by someone who'd given up on interior decorating. Her dining table was buried under laptops and coffee cups and half-eaten takeout containers. Someone had taped butcher paper to the walls covered in brainstorming notes and campaign concepts. Paul had his design set up in the corner, dual monitors somehow balanced on a bookshelf. The place smelled like coffee and ambition and probably violated several occupancy codes. We need to talk about infrastructure, Nate said, looking up from his laptop where he'd been building financial models for 3 hours straight. We can't pitch major clients without a legal entity. We need incorporation papers, business insurance, operating agreements. The paperwork alone takes weeks. Sarah was on the floor surrounded by printed contracts, reading through the non-compete agreements we'd all signed at Elsworth. These non-competes are weaker than I thought. They prevent us from directly reaching out to Elsworth clients, but if clients come to us? That's legally murky. And the geographic restriction is only 50 miles. We could technically set up shop across the river and be clear. Quinn was pacing, phone pressed to her ear, talking to someone about office space. Yes, I understand it's short notice. We need something by next week. 1,500 square feet minimum. Conference room. High-speed internet. Month to month if possible. She covered the phone, looked at Nate. There's a co-working space in the Pearl District with private offices available. $2,000 a month. Steep but flexible. Nate typed numbers into his spreadsheet. If we close Meridian, we can swing it. If we don't, we're operating out of here for the foreseeable future. My phone rang. Jennifer Park, my attorney. I stepped into Quinn's bedroom, which had become the unofficial private call room. Greta, we need to meet today. I've been contacted by 3 other former Elsworth executives with similar stories to yours. Arthur has a pattern, and it's documented. I'm officially recommending we pursue a class action lawsuit. She paused. Your case is still the strongest because of the video evidence, but this is bigger than wrongful termination. This is systemic abuse of power, and we have receipts. I sat on Quinn's bed, the same spot I'd occupied during half a dozen crisis calls this week. What does that mean for timeline? Jennifer's keyboard clicking came through the phone. We file within 2 weeks. The video, the email evidence of succession planning, testimony from witnesses who walked out with you, this is airtight. Arthur's lawyers are going to want to settle quickly before this becomes public record. I'm estimating between $3 to $5 million for your individual claim, plus whatever the class action yields for the others. $5 million. The number still didn't feel real. Quinn ended her call about office space and clapped her hands together. Okay, people. Reality check time. We have a pitch with Meridian tomorrow at 2 p.m. Catherine Walsh and her entire executive team. This is $36 million in annual revenue riding on 90 minutes. What do we have? Paul pulled up the presentation deck he'd been building. 40 slides of campaign strategy, case studies, team bios, and projected ROI. We're positioning ourselves as boutique but powerful. Small enough to care, big enough to execute. The whole pitch is basically, we're the team that built Elsworth's success, now we're building our own. Sarah looked up from her contract reading. We need to be careful about how we reference Elsworth work. Legally, they own the campaigns we created there. We can talk about results in general terms, but we can't claim ownership of specific creative. Nate added another sheet to his spreadsheet. We're also going to need a rate card. What are we charging? Do we go lower than Elsworth to be competitive, or higher to signal premium quality? Quinn sat down, rubbed her temples. Higher. We're not the discount option. We're the, you get the actual talent instead of whoever they replace us with, option. My phone buzzed with an email. Subject line, let's talk. Sender, David Morrison from Garrison Tech, their chief marketing officer. I opened it, read it twice, then read it out loud to the room. Greta, I've been trying to reach you since Tuesday. Our account at Elsworth is a disaster. Cailee Storm called me Wednesday morning unable to answer basic questions about our Q4 campaign. Then we found out your entire team walked out. Then we heard about the database failure. Our contract is up for renewal in 60 days. I'd like to discuss alternatives. Can you meet next week? The room went silent. Then Paul started laughing. They're already jumping ship. It hasn't even been a week. Quinn grabbed her laptop, started typing furiously. We need to respond professionally but not desperate. Something like, we'd be happy to discuss your marketing needs. We're currently scheduling consultations for the following week. She looked at me. What's our capacity? Can we actually handle Meridian and Garrison simultaneously if we close both? Nate was already calculating. If we close both, that's $54 million in combined revenue. We'd need to hire immediately. Account managers, creatives, media buyers, project managers. We'd go from 39 people to probably 60 within 3 months. The number felt impossible and inevitable at the same time. Someone knocked on Quinn's door. We all looked at each other like we'd been caught doing something illegal. Quinn opened it to find Derek Clausen from IT standing there with a laptop bag and what he could carry. I quit this morning, he announced. Told Arthur I couldn't work for someone who values ego over competence. He told me I was making a mistake. I told him the mistake was promoting someone who deleted 17 years of data. He looked around at the chaos of Quinn's apartment. So, are you hiring? Because you're going to need IT infrastructure if you're serious about this. Quinn looked at me. I looked at Nate. Nate looked at his spreadsheet. We can't afford full salary yet, but if you're willing to work for equity until we close some contracts. Derek was already unpacking his laptop. I'm in. Where do you want me? Paul cleared a space at the table that had been occupied by pizza boxes. Welcome to Forge Creative. We have coffee and existential terror. Help yourself to both. By Thursday evening, we'd incorporated Forge Creative Group as an LLC, opened a business bank account with the pooled savings of 5 founding partners, and sent proposals to Meridian and Garrison Tech. The proposals were good, maybe the best work any of us had ever done because we were fighting for survival instead of just collecting paychecks. Paul's designs were sharper, Quinn's strategy was tighter, Nate's numbers were more convincing. We were operating on pure adrenaline and spite, which turned out to be incredibly motivating. My phone rang at 11 p.m. Catherine Walsh from Meridian. I read your proposal. It's exactly what we need. But I have questions about operations. You don't have office space. You don't have support staff. You're basically 39 people who quit their jobs in a dramatic gesture. Her voice wasn't accusatory, just factual. That's true, I admitted. We've been operational for 72 hours. We have office space secured for next week. We're hiring support staff. But honestly, Catherine, what we have right now is the entire leadership team that made Elsworth Media successful. The same people who've been managing your account for 3 years. The same people who understand your brand, your audience, your goals. The only difference is now we're not spending half our time dealing with corporate politics and incompetent executives. She was quiet for a moment. I could hear papers shuffling on her end. Your proposal is 50% more expensive than what Elsworth was charging us. My stomach dropped. We'd gone premium pricing, but maybe we'd gone too high. It is, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Because we're not charging you for bureaucracy and executive salaries that don't add value. You're paying for actual talent, actual strategy, actual results. No account managers who don't know your business. No junior creatives learning on your dime. Just the team that's been delivering for you all along. More silence. Then, I'll see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Bring your best work. We're not easy to impress. She hung up before I could respond. I walked back into Quinn's living room where everyone was still working despite the late hour. She said bring our best work. Quinn looked up from her laptop, grinned. Good thing that's all we've got left. The knock on my apartment door Friday morning at 7 a.m. was unexpected enough that I answered it in my bathrobe, coffee cup in hand, presentation notes for the Meridian pitch scattered across my kitchen table. Standing in the hallway was someone I genuinely never expected to see again, my ex-boyfriend from 2 years ago, Julian Elsworth. No relation to Arthur, just unfortunate surname timing. He was holding flowers. Roses. Red roses, specifically, which would have been romantic except I'd told him 3 times during our relationship that I was allergic to roses and preferred literally any other flower. Greta. He smiled like we were old friends running into each other at a coffee shop instead of exes who hadn't spoken since he'd dumped me over text message while I was in the middle of a client presentation. I heard about what happened at Elsworth. Wanted to check in, see how you're doing. I stared at him, then at the roses, then back at him. How did you get my address? His smile faltered slightly. Quinn posted something on LinkedIn about Forge Creative. I figured you'd be involved. Asked around, found out where you lived. Is this a bad time? Yes, I said, starting to close the door. He put his hand on it, not forcing it but preventing me from shutting it completely. Wait. I wanted to talk. Maybe apologize for how things ended between us. I took a sip of coffee, studied him. Julian hadn't changed much, same expensive haircut, same designer casual clothes that were carefully calculated to look effortless. You texted me, "This isn't working," while I was presenting to a client. Then blocked my number. What exactly are you apologizing for? The cowardice or the timing? He had the grace to look uncomfortable. Both, I guess. Look, I've been following your career. What you built at Elsworth was impressive. And now starting your own agency? That takes guts. I always knew you were special, Greta. There it was. The real reason for the 7 a.m. visit with flowers I was allergic to. You want something, I said flatly. What is it? Julian shifted his weight, the charming smile returning. I work in venture capital now. Early stage funding for creative agencies and tech startups. When I heard about Forge Creative, I thought maybe we could talk. Professional collaboration. I could introduce you to some investors, help you scale faster. I leaned against my doorframe, genuinely curious now. Let me get this straight. You dumped me via text 2 years ago. Haven't spoken to me since. Now I'm suddenly special and worth your time because I might be profitable. He opened his mouth to protest, but I kept going. Here's what I think happened. You heard about the walkout, probably saw it trending in industry circles. Did some research, realized we might actually pull this off, and thought you'd swoop in as the helpful ex-boyfriend turned business angel. Get in early on what could be a successful agency, probably position yourself to take credit for discovering us later. That's not fair, Julian said, but his voice lacked conviction. You're right, I agreed. What's not fair is showing up at my apartment at 7 a.m. with flowers I'm allergic to, pretending you care about me when you're really just trying to attach yourself to something successful. I took the roses from him, walked to my kitchen trash can, and dropped them in while he watched from the doorway. I have a pitch in 7 hours that's worth $36 million. I don't have time for whatever this is. He stood there for a moment, the mask finally dropping. You're making a mistake. You need investors, Greta. You can't build an agency on spite and good intentions. I walked back to the door. Watch me. I closed it in his face, locked it, and stood there for a minute feeling my hands shake slightly. Not from fear or doubt, but from the realization of how many people were suddenly interested in me now that I might be worth something. 2 years of silence, and now he shows up with venture capital offers and roses. My phone rang. Unknown number again, but I was getting used to those. Greta, this is Abigail Elsworth. Arthur's wife, calling for the second time this week. I'm sure you're busy preparing for your Meridian pitch. How did everyone suddenly know my schedule? I am, I said cautiously. This will be quick. I wanted to give you a heads up. Arthur is planning to show up at your pitch. My blood went cold. What? Abigail's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was reporting the weather. He found out about your meeting with Catherine Walsh. He's planning to crash it, claim that Forge Creative is violating non-compete agreements by going after Elsworth clients. He wants to intimidate you into backing off. I sat down at my kitchen table, staring at my presentation notes. Can he actually do that legally? Abigail laughed, that same bitter sound I'd heard on our last call. No. Your attorney already confirmed your non-competes don't prevent clients from choosing to work with you. But Arthur doesn't care about legal technicalities. He cares about control and intimidation. He's going to try to make a scene, embarrass you in front of Catherine Walsh, make you look unprofessional. She paused. I'm telling you this because you deserve to be prepared. And because I'm done watching him bully people. I thanked her, hung up, and immediately called Jennifer Park, my attorney. We have a problem. I explained Arthur's plan. Jennifer was quiet for a moment, then I heard her smile through the phone. Actually, this is perfect. If he shows up and harasses you during a business meeting, that's additional evidence for our lawsuit. Harassment, intimidation, trying to mess with your business. Let him come. Just make sure someone records it. She paused. Actually, I'll come with you. Attorney-client meeting that happens to coincide with your pitch. If Arthur shows up and causes problems, I'll be there to document it and shut it down legally. By noon, I was dressed in my best suit, presentation loaded on my laptop, and meeting the team at the co-working space we'd rented for the day because pitching from Quinn's apartment felt too informal for a $36 million deal. The space was modern and clean, all glass and white walls and expensive-looking furniture we definitely couldn't afford to buy but could rent by the hour. Paul had the presentation queued up on a massive screen. Quinn was reviewing talking points. Nate had printed financial projections that looked professional enough to belong in a Fortune 500 boardroom. Jennifer Park arrived at 1:30, exactly on time, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my rent. Just act natural. I'm here as your attorney observing a business meeting. If Arthur shows up, let me handle it. At 1:55, Catherine Walsh walked in with 3 members of her executive team. She looked around the co-working space, taking in our temporary headquarters, and I couldn't tell if she was impressed or concerned. Thank you for meeting with us, I said, shaking her hand. We know our setup is unconventional, but we're scrappy, Catherine finished. I like scrappy. Scrappy usually means hungry. Hungry usually means excellent work. She sat down, her team flanking her. Show me what you've got. Paul started the presentation and it was good, really good. Better than anything we'd done at Elsworth because we weren't designing by committee or watering down ideas to make Arthur happy. This was pure strategy, pure creativity, pure execution. Catherine was nodding, taking notes, asking smart questions that showed she actually understood marketing unlike most executives who just pretended. We were 45 minutes in, hitting our stride, when the conference room door opened. Arthur Elsworth walked in like he owned the place, Cailee trailing behind him looking uncomfortable. Catherine, he said, ignoring the rest of us completely. We need to talk about what's happening here. Catherine looked up from her notes, her expression cooling immediately. Arthur. What are you doing here? He pulled out a chair uninvited, sat down. Protecting your interests. These people are violating their non-compete agreements. Any contract you sign with them could expose Meridian to legal liability. Jennifer Park stood up, her voice professional but sharp. Mr. Elsworth, I'm Jennifer Park, legal counsel for Forge Creative Group. Your presence here is unwelcome and constitutes harassment and interference with business relations. I'm going to ask you once to leave. Arthur looked at her, then at me, then at Catherine. You're really going to trust your brand to a group of disgruntled ex-employees who quit in a dramatic tantrum? Catherine Walsh set down her pen, and her expression was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. Arthur, I'm going to say this once. The only reason I'm sitting in this room is because your company has been a disaster since Tuesday. Your protégé, she glanced at Cailee who looked like she wanted to disappear, couldn't answer basic questions about our account. Your database failure cost us 3 days of campaign work. And now you're barging into my business meeting making threats. Get out. Arthur's face went red. You're making a mistake, Catherine. These people are, Jennifer cut him off. Mr. Elsworth, you're now trespassing. Leave immediately or I'm calling security and adding this incident to our harassment claim. Arthur stood up slowly, trying to maintain some dignity. He looked at me, and for a second, I saw something that might have been regret or realization. Then it was gone, replaced by the same arrogance I'd dealt with for 6 years. He walked out, Cailee following behind, and the door closed with a definitive click. Catherine Walsh waited exactly 3 seconds after Arthur left before turning back to us like nothing had happened. So, slide 46. You were talking about audience segmentation. Paul, to his credit, picked up right where we'd left off without missing a beat. We finished the presentation 20 minutes later, and Catherine closed her notebook with a decisive snap. I've seen enough. Meridian wants to work with Forge Creative. $36 million annually, 3-year contract with performance reviews every 6 months. I'll have my legal team send over the paperwork by Monday. The room erupted. Quinn actually jumped out of her chair. Nate looked like he might cry. Paul was already texting the rest of the team waiting back at Quinn's apartment. Catherine stood up, shook my hand again. For what it's worth, watching Arthur crash your pitch and get escorted out by your attorney was the most confident I've felt about this decision. A leader who stays composed under pressure is exactly what we need. She smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her executive demeanor. Welcome to the Meridian family. Don't mess this up. After she left, Jennifer turned to me. That incident just added another $200,000 to your lawsuit. Harassment in front of a client, attempted interference with business relations, all documented and witnessed. Arthur just made my job significantly easier. We were celebrating with sparkling water from the co-working space's break room, all we had access to, when my phone rang. Private number. I answered to find a voice I didn't recognize, young and shaky. Greta? This is Cailee. Cailee Storm. Please don't hang up. I looked at Quinn, who raised her eyebrows, asking silently if I was going to take this. I nodded and walked to an empty office. What do you want, Cailee? The confidence I'd seen in the boardroom 6 days ago was completely gone. Her voice was small, almost childlike. I need help. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm desperate. Arthur fired me this morning. Said I was the reason for the database disaster and the client exodus. He's telling everyone in the industry that I'm incompetent, that I destroyed the company. Nobody will hire me now. I've sent out 47 applications and gotten 0 responses. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction. The person who'd helped orchestrate my humiliation was now experiencing her own. But mostly I just felt tired. Cailee, what do you want from me? She was crying now, ugly sobs that made her words come out in gasps. Just a reference. Just something that says I'm not completely worthless. I have student loans, rent, my dad's been sick and I'm helping with his medical bills. I made a mistake working with Arthur. I thought that's how you got ahead in business, playing politics, aligning with powerful people. I didn't realize I was just a pawn. I looked out the window at the city below, people rushing to lunch meetings and appointments, everyone fighting their own battles. You took credit for my work. You sat in my chair while Arthur rehearsed firing me. You smiled while he gave me 60 seconds to pack everything I'd built. Silence on the other end except for sniffling. I know what I did. I thought that's what success looked like, taking opportunities, positioning yourself strategically. My father's a hedge fund manager. That's how his world works. I didn't understand that marketing is different, that relationships matter, that you can't fake competence. Here's the thing, Cailee, I said, watching cars move through intersections below. You didn't just take credit for my work. You helped destroy my reputation, my career, my livelihood. And now that it's backfired, now that Arthur turned on you the way he turned on me, you want me to save you. More silence. You're right. I shouldn't have called. I'm sorry. She started to hang up, but something made me stop her. Wait. I took a breath, thought about what Quinn would say, what Jennifer would advise, what pure spite would dictate. I'm not going to give you a reference. You didn't earn it, and honestly, lying for you would make me part of whatever disaster you cause at your next job. Cailee's breath hitched like she was about to start crying again. But I am going to give you some advice, because someone should have given it to you before Arthur got his hands on you. Stop trying to skip steps. Stop looking for shortcuts and powerful people to attach yourself to. Get an entry-level job somewhere and actually learn how to do the work. Real success isn't about positioning and politics. It's about being good enough that people follow you into uncertainty because they trust your competence. You want to know why 38 people walked out with me? Because I spent 6 years proving I gave a damn about them and the work. There's no shortcut for that. I could hear her breathing on the other end, processing. How do I fix this? How do I come back from everyone thinking I'm incompetent? Her voice was so young, so lost. You own it, I said. You tell the truth in your next interview. You say you got in over your head, made mistakes, learned from them. You ask for a junior position where you can actually develop skills. And then you work twice as hard as everyone else to prove you've changed. Maybe in 5 years, you'll be decent at this. Maybe in 10, you'll be good. But you've got to actually put in the time. Silence stretched between us. Then, quietly, thank you. I don't deserve your advice, but thank you. She hung up before I could respond. I stood there for a moment, phone in hand, feeling strange. Not vindicated, not satisfied, just empty. Quinn appeared in the doorway. Was that who I think it was? I nodded. Did you tell her off? Please tell me you told her off. I shook my head. Worse. I gave her actual advice. Quinn stared at me. You're a better person than me. I would have laughed and hung up. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Derek Clausen from IT. Wanted to let you know Arthur just called an emergency board meeting. Rumor is they're voting him out. Thought you'd want to know. I showed Quinn the text. She read it, then smiled. Karma's moving faster than usual this week. We walked back to the conference room where the rest of the team was packing up. Jennifer was on her phone, gesturing emphatically about something legal. Paul was already redesigning our website to feature Meridian as a client. Nate was updating spreadsheets with actual revenue instead of projections. Okay, so what do we do now? Quinn said once everyone was settled. We have Meridian locked. Garrison Tech wants to meet Monday. We need office space, support staff, systems, infrastructure. We're about to go from a rebellion to an actual company. The weight of that statement settled over everyone. This wasn't a dramatic gesture anymore. This was real. Sarah spoke up from her spot on the floor where she'd been reviewing contracts. I heard from 3 other Elsworth clients today. They're all asking about our capacity, our rates, our timeline. If we close even 2 more accounts, we're looking at $70 million in revenue. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized, my old mentor from my first job out of college, Grace Portman. Greta, I've been watching what's happening. The walkout, the new agency, all of it. I'm proud of you. But I'm calling because you need to be prepared for what comes next. Her voice was serious in a way that made me pay attention. What do you mean? Grace had been in the industry for 30 years, had seen every trend and crash and resurrection. Arthur Elsworth is finished. The board is meeting right now to force him out. When that happens, there's going to be chaos at Elsworth Media. More clients will leave. More employees will quit. You're going to be seen as the alternative, the place where talent went. That's powerful, but it's also a target. I sat down, suddenly exhausted. What kind of target? Grace's voice softened. The kind where bigger agencies try to acquire you before you become real competition. The kind where clients expect you to be perfect from day one because you positioned yourself as the better alternative. The kind where every mistake gets magnified because people are watching to see if the rebellion was worth it. You've won the first battle, Greta. But the war is just starting. She paused. Do you have a good lawyer? I looked at Jennifer, who was still on her phone. Yeah, actually. One of the best. Grace laughed. Good. You're going to need her. Congratulations on Meridian. Now go build something that lasts. The official news broke Monday morning while I was reviewing the Garrison Tech pitch deck in our new temporary office space. Adweek's headline was brutal and beautiful. Arthur Elsworth forced out as CEO following database disaster and mass executive exodus. The article was 3,000 words of corporate carnage. Board vote was unanimous. Effective immediately. No golden parachute because they'd found cause, mismanagement, abuse of authority, creating a hostile work environment. They'd interviewed former employees who came forward once Arthur lost his protection. Stories going back 15 years. The pattern Abigail had warned me about, now public record. Quinn burst into my office, an actual office now, tiny but mine, with her laptop. Look at this. She pulled up Elsworth Media's stock price. Down 42% in 7 days. They're in free fall. 3 more clients announced they're leaving this morning. The trade publications are calling it the fastest corporate collapse in industry history. My phone rang. Jennifer Park. Have you seen the news? I confirmed I had. Good. Because Arthur's lawyers just called. They want to settle. Today. Before the wrongful termination lawsuit becomes public record and makes everything worse for him. We met in a conference room at Jennifer's law firm, neutral territory that felt about as neutral as a battlefield. The space was all dark wood and expensive art and windows overlooking the city from the 40th floor. Arthur arrived with 2 lawyers, both looking like they'd aged a decade in a week. He'd lost weight. His suit didn't fit right anymore, hanging loose on a frame that seemed to have physically shrunk. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked like defeat wearing expensive clothes. Let's keep this brief, Jennifer said, laying out documents. My client has solid proof this firing was planned and wrong. Video footage of rehearsal, email chains proving succession planning without notification, witness testimony from 38 executives. We're prepared to pursue full damages which, given the public nature of the termination and subsequent harassment, we've calculated at $5.2 million. One of Arthur's lawyers cleared his throat. Mr. Elsworth is prepared to offer $800,000 in severance, full benefits continuation for 18 months, and a mutual agreement not to talk badly about each other. Jennifer didn't even look up from her notes. That's the baseline hostile termination clause already in her contract. You're not negotiating. You're just following the contract you should have read before you publicly humiliated her. She slid a paper across the table. Here's our counter. $3.8 million. Written acknowledgement that the termination was handled improperly. No restriction on our end, my client has the right to speak truthfully about her experience. And Mr. Elsworth agrees not to interfere with Forge Creative's business operations or client relationships. The lawyers looked at Arthur. He was staring at the table, jaw clenched. Finally, he looked up at me. You destroyed everything I built. His voice was quiet, hollow. I leaned forward. No, Arthur. You destroyed what we built together. I just refuse to go down with your ship. The words came out calmer than I felt. You gave me 60 seconds to pack everything I'd built. Rehearsed my firing like it was a performance. Promoted someone unqualified to prove I was replaceable. And when that person destroyed your infrastructure, you tried to blame everyone except yourself. You didn't lose your company because of me. You lost it because you valued control over competence. One of Arthur's lawyers put a hand on his arm, but Arthur shook it off. Those 38 people were my employees. You turned them against me. I almost laughed. They weren't yours, Arthur. They were people. People who watched you humiliate someone for no reason except ego and decided they didn't want to work for someone like that. You didn't lose them in 60 seconds. You lost them over 6 years of treating everyone like they were disposable. The negotiation took another hour. Arthur's lawyers tried to reduce the number, add restrictions, salvage something. Jennifer shot down every attempt with documentation I'd barely known she was collecting. Screenshots of Arthur's LinkedIn posts about leadership. Statements from former employees about his pattern of behavior. The security footage of him rehearsing my termination played on her laptop for everyone to see. By the time we finished, the settlement was $3.5 million, written acknowledgement of improper termination, and a clause preventing Arthur from making any negative statements about me or Forge Creative for 5 years. Arthur signed with a hand that trembled slightly, his signature smaller than I remembered from company documents. When he passed the paperwork to me, our eyes met. No words were exchanged but entire conversations happened in that silence. His eyes said, "You ruined me." Mine replied, "You ruined yourself." His said, "I gave you a career." Mine answered, "I earned everything I got, and you know it." As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. For a moment I thought he might apologize, might finally say something real. But men like Arthur don't apologize. They just retreat and convince themselves they were wronged. After he left, Jennifer pulled up something on her laptop. I thought you'd want to see this. Tom Rodriguez from security sent it over this morning. More footage from the day Arthur resigned. The video showed Arthur standing in what used to be my office, completely empty now. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m., 3 days after I'd walked out. He was alone, talking to the empty room. No sound, but Tom had included subtitles based on lip reading. 60 seconds. I gave her 60 seconds and she took everything. The team. The clients. My reputation. Everything. Jennifer closed the laptop. He still doesn't get it. Still thinks you took something from him instead of understanding he threw it away. I sat there in that expensive conference room, looking at the paperwork that made me $3.5 million richer, and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication. Just emptiness. Is this what winning feels like? Jennifer smiled, understanding. Sometimes winning just means surviving with your dignity intact. The satisfaction comes later, when you build something better. My phone buzzed. Quinn, Garrison Tech just signed. $18 million annually. We're officially at $54 million in revenue. We need to hire like yesterday. Another text, this time from Paul, just got a call from Patterson Industries. They want to talk. Word is spreading fast. Another from Nate, updated financial projections. If we close 2 more accounts this size, we'll need to find bigger office space within 6 months. This is really happening. I stood up, shook Jennifer's hand. Thank you for this. She walked me to the elevator. Thank you for having a case with actual evidence. Most wrongful termination suits are he said she said. Yours was a masterclass in documentation. As I rode the elevator down 40 floors, I thought about Arthur standing in my empty office, finally understanding what he'd lost. Not just an employee. Not just a team. But the people who made his success possible, all because he couldn't resist the urge to humiliate someone who'd done nothing but make him look good. I walked out into afternoon sunshine, phone already ringing with another opportunity, another client, another step forward. The settlement check would clear in 3 days. $3.5 million felt surreal, like monopoly money, like compensation for something that couldn't really be compensated. But it wasn't about the money. It was about Arthur being forced to acknowledge, in writing, that he'd been wrong. That the termination was improper. That his behavior was unacceptable. Small victories, maybe, but I'd learned that sometimes small victories were all you could ask for. Quinn called as I was getting into my car. Where are you? We need to celebrate. We just became a $54 million company and you just became a millionaire. I started the engine, checked my mirrors. I'm heading to the office. We have a company to build. Quinn laughed. Classic Greta. Becomes a millionaire and wants to get back to work. She paused. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Not for the money. For not breaking when Arthur tried to break you. For turning 60 seconds of humiliation into this. I pulled out of the parking garage into traffic, joining the flow of the city. Thanks for standing up with me. All 38 of you. I couldn't have done this alone. Quinn's voice got serious. You wouldn't have had to. That's the whole point. Arthur thought he could humiliate you and everyone would just watch. He forgot that people remember how you treat them when things get hard. You spent 6 years treating people with respect. We spent 60 seconds returning the favor. The settlement check cleared on Thursday morning, and suddenly $3.5 million was sitting in my bank account like some kind of typo that accounting would eventually catch and correct. I stared at my phone's banking app for a full minute, refreshing it twice to make sure the number wasn't going to disappear. It didn't. I was officially wealthier than I'd ever imagined being, and my first thought was I should probably figure out what rich people do with their money besides buy terrible art and complicated watches. My second thought was interrupted by Quinn calling. Emergency meeting. New office. 10 a.m. We're something professional because we have 6 job candidates coming in for interviews. We'd upgraded from her apartment to actual office space in the Pearl District, 1,500 square feet of exposed brick and industrial lighting that somehow made us look more legitimate than we probably were. When I arrived, 38 people had somehow become 47. New faces I didn't recognize were setting up desks, running cables, assembling furniture from flat boxes covered in Swedish instructions that made no sense. Who are all these people? I asked Quinn, who was directing traffic like an air traffic controller during a storm. Project managers, account coordinators, IT support. We had to hire fast. Turns out when you land $54 million in contracts, you need actual infrastructure. She handed me a coffee. Also, your 2 o'clock is here early. Didn't want to reschedule. I checked my calendar. 2 p.m. was blocked off as personal, do not schedule. I looked at Quinn questioningly. She just pointed to our new conference room where someone was waiting. Through the glass, I could see my parents. My actual parents, who lived 4 states away and whom I'd last seen at Christmas where we'd had an awkward dinner and talked about nothing important. My mother stood up when I walked in, and I realized I'd never told them about the termination, the walkout, any of it. Greta, honey, why didn't you call us? She hugged me hard, the kind of hug that said she'd been worried for days. We saw the articles. Adweek, Business Insider, all of them. Our daughter is in the news for starting a company, and we had to find out from the internet? My father, quieter but no less concerned, pulled me into a hug next. We drove straight through the night when we saw what happened. Are you okay? Really okay? I realized I hadn't cried since this whole thing started. Not when Arthur fired me, not when I walked out, not during any of the chaos that followed. But standing in my new office with my parents who'd driven through the night because they'd read about my crisis online, I felt tears start. I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. It's just been a lot. We sat down and I told them everything. The mentoring of Cailee, the rehearsed termination, the 60 seconds, the 38 people who walked out, the database disaster, the clients who followed us, the settlement. My mother held my hand through the whole story, her grip tightening when I got to the parts about Arthur's cruelty. That man should be arrested, she said when I finished. My father, ever practical, asked about the business structure, the contracts, whether I had a good accountant. Dad, I just became a millionaire and started a company in the same week. I haven't exactly gotten to accountants yet. He pulled out a business card. This is our accountant. She's excellent. Call her today because the IRS is going to be very interested in your settlement check. My mother was looking around the office through the glass walls. Look at all these people. They all walked out with you? I nodded. Every single one. Left 6-figure salaries and stock options because they watched something they couldn't stomach. My mother's eyes got watery. We raised you right then. To be someone worth following. They stayed for 3 hours, meeting the team, hearing stories about the walkout from different perspectives, watching our new company function in real time. When they left, my mother hugged me again. Your grandmother would be proud. She always said integrity matters more than comfort. Looks like you proved her right. After they drove away, I stood in our office looking at the organized chaos. Paul was presenting designs to a new client over video call. Nate was training 2 new financial analysts on our budgeting systems. Sarah was onboarding an account management team, walking them through our client communication protocols. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I was getting used to those. Greta. This is Marcus Webb from Webb & Associates. I represent the building at 5th and Morrison, Class A office space, 12,000 square feet available. I heard through the grapevine you might be looking to expand. I looked around our current 1,500 square feet, already bursting at the seams with 47 people and growing. How did you hear that? Marcus laughed. Word travels fast in this city. Especially when a company goes from 0 to 50 million in revenue in 2 weeks. That's the kind of growth that needs space. He wasn't wrong. We set up a viewing for tomorrow morning. After I hung up, Jennifer Park called. Have you been following the Elsworth situation? I hadn't, actually. Too busy building our company to watch their implosion. The board installed an interim CEO yesterday. First thing she did was announce their restructuring, probably downsizing. Industry analysts are saying Elsworth Media might not survive the year. Jennifer paused. How does that make you feel? I thought about it honestly. Empty. I spent 6 years building that place. Seeing it collapse is like watching a building you used to live in burn down. Even if you don't live there anymore, it still feels significant. That's healthy, Jennifer said. Means you're processing this like a person, not just celebrating someone's downfall. She had more news. 3 more former executives reached out about the class action. Your case opened the door for others to speak up. We're looking at potentially 15 plaintiffs, all with similar stories. The pattern Abigail had mentioned, now becoming public record. Arthur hadn't just destroyed my career temporarily. He'd been destroying careers systematically for over a decade. Keep me updated, I told Jennifer. And thank you. For everything. That evening, our team gathered for our first official company celebration. Not in someone's apartment this time, but in a restaurant we'd rented out because we'd actually had the budget for it. 47 people plus significant others, family members, friends who'd supported us through the chaos. Quinn stood up to make a toast. 2 weeks ago, we were unemployed. Today, we're a company. Not because we planned it, not because we're brilliant, but because we refuse to accept humiliation as the cost of employment. To Greta, who stayed calm when most people would have broken. And to everyone in this room who stood up when it mattered. Glasses clinked. Someone started telling the story of the walkout from their perspective, and suddenly everyone was sharing their version. The Morrison twins described watching through the glass walls as person after person stood up. Derek from IT talked about Tom Rodriguez's face when he realized what was happening. Paul admitted he'd almost stayed seated, scared to walk away from stability, until he saw Sarah stand and realized he'd regret not following. I figured if I was going to be unemployed, might as well be unemployed with people I actually respect, he said, getting a huge laugh. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Abigail Elsworth. I filed for divorce today. 30 years was long enough. Thank you for showing me that sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away with your dignity intact. Good luck with Forge Creative. I showed Quinn the text. She read it, then raised her glass. To walking away. May we always know when to do it and have the courage to follow through. I looked around the restaurant at these people who'd risked everything based on nothing but trust and principle. 2 weeks ago, I'd been standing in a boardroom being given 60 seconds to pack my life. Now I was here, surrounded by the accidental family we'd built from the ashes of that moment. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert. Arthur Elsworth resigns from all board positions following shareholder pressure. The article was short. He was done, completely done, severed from every professional tie he'd spent 40 years building. Not fired this time. He'd resigned, probably forced out but given the dignity of choosing his exit. More dignity than he'd given me, but that seemed fitting somehow. He'd get to retreat quietly while I built something loud and successful from the rubble of his empire. Are you okay? Quinn asked, noticing I'd gone quiet. I put my phone away. Yeah. Just realizing that 2 weeks can change everything. Everything. 6 months later, I stood in our actual office, not temporary space, not a co-working rental, but 12,000 square feet of glass and exposed brick with Forge Creative Group etched into the elevator lobby in letters that caught the morning light. We'd grown to 93 employees. The 4th floor of a building in downtown that we'd signed a 5-year lease on, which felt both terrifying and permanent in ways I was still getting used to. My office had a door that closed and windows that overlooked the city and furniture I'd actually chosen instead of inherited from whoever left it behind. Quinn knocked and walked in without waiting for an answer, which was fair since her office was right next to mine with an adjoining door we rarely bothered closing. You need to see this. She pulled up LinkedIn on her laptop, turned it toward me. Arthur Elsworth's profile had been updated that morning. New title, Independent Business Consultant. Location, a business park address I recognized as one of those places where startups went to die quietly, shared office space above a tax preparation service. His latest post was about leadership through adversity and the importance of resilience. 3 likes. I clicked on them, 2 were clearly bot accounts, and 1 was from someone trying to sell him marketing automation software. That's sad, I said, and I meant it. Not satisfied sad, just genuinely sad. Quinn shrugged. That's consequences. He works alone now. No team, no clients, no reputation. Industry blacklist is real, and his name is at the top. She closed the laptop. Speaking of which, your 10 o'clock is here. Patterson Industries. I checked my watch. They were early, which usually meant they were eager. Patterson Industries represented $42 million in annual revenue and the kind of corporate prestige that opened doors with other Fortune 500 companies. If we closed this, we'd be at $136 million in annual revenue. Legitimate territory. Not a startup story anymore, but an actual agency. The pitch went well. Better than well, actually. Their CMO had done his research, mentioned the walkout specifically. That kind of loyalty, 38 people following you into uncertainty, that tells me everything I need to know about your leadership. By noon, we had a signed letter of intent. By afternoon, my phone was exploding with calls from other companies asking about our capacity. Word traveled fast in industries built on relationships. We weren't just the agency that rose from a dramatic walkout anymore. We were the agency that delivered results, and the origin story was just good marketing at this point. I was reviewing financial projections when my assistant, I had an assistant now, which still felt surreal, buzzed my phone. Someone's here to see you. Says it's personal. Won't give a name. I walked to reception, curious and slightly concerned, to find someone I genuinely hadn't expected. Cailee Storm, wearing business casual instead of designer labels, holding a portfolio that looked worn instead of pristine. She stood up when she saw me. I know I don't have an appointment. I just wanted to say thank you. In person. We walked to a conference room. She looked different, thinner, tired, but somehow more real. I took your advice. Got an entry-level job at a small agency doing social media coordination. Minimum wage basically, considering what I was making before. I'd been there 4 months. She opened her portfolio, showed me campaigns she'd worked on. Actual work, not just ideas borrowed from other people. It's hard. I make a fraction of what I used to, or thought I would. But I'm learning. Really learning, not just pretending I know things. I looked at her work. It was decent. Not great, but decent, which was honestly more than I expected. Why are you showing me this? Cailee closed the portfolio. Because you were right. I tried to skip steps, thought proximity to power was the same as earning success. And I destroyed my career at 26 because I didn't understand the difference. I wanted you to know I'm trying to fix it. Not asking for anything, just wanted you to know your advice actually helped someone, even if that someone didn't deserve it. She left before I could respond, and I stood in that conference room feeling strange. Not vindicated, not proud, just aware that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened to someone else. Her humiliation had taught her what years of expensive education couldn't. My humiliation had taught me that dignity under pressure was worth more than any title. My phone buzzed. Grace Portman, my old mentor, texting, saw the Patterson deal announcement. Proud of you. Lunch next week? I replied yes and walked back to my office where Quinn was already updating our website with Patterson's logo, Paul was designing their welcome packet, and Nate was restructuring our hiring timeline because 93 employees wasn't going to cut it for much longer. We need to talk about succession planning, Quinn said without looking up from her laptop. What happens if one of us gets hit by a bus? We need structure, documentation, actual processes instead of just winging it. She was right. We'd built Forge Creative on urgency and spite and the refusal to accept humiliation. But companies didn't survive on origin stories. They survived on systems, processes, the boring infrastructure that nobody celebrated but everyone depended on. Let's schedule it, I agreed. Proper planning this time. With lawyers and accountants and all the things we were too busy surviving to think about before. That evening, I drove past Elsworth Media's old headquarters building. There was a "for lease" sign in the window. The company had moved to smaller offices across town, downsized to a third of their former size. The building that had housed my humiliation and my triumphs stood empty, waiting for whatever came next. I didn't feel satisfaction seeing it vacant. Just the strange awareness that buildings didn't care about the dramas that happened inside them. They just existed, waiting for the next story. I pulled up news articles from 6 months ago on my phone while stopped at a red light. Mass exodus at Elsworth Media had turned into Forge Creative Group raises series of funding, had turned into former Elsworth executives build $100 million agency. The story kept evolving, kept growing, kept moving past the origin point until the walkout was just the beginning instead of the whole narrative. My phone rang. Jennifer Park. Quick update. The class action settled. 17 plaintiffs, 15 million total. Your individual case was the catalyst, but this was bigger than you. Arthur Elsworth's pattern of abuse is now public record with financial consequences attached. She paused. How does it feel, knowing you helped other people get justice? I thought about it. Like closing a chapter. Not the whole book, just one chapter. Jennifer laughed. Good answer. Keep writing the next ones. At home that night, I opened my laptop and looked at the photo from that first day in Quinn's apartment. 38 people crammed into a 2-bedroom space, sitting on floors and counters, eating pizza and planning revolution. We looked exhausted and terrified and hopeful all at once. I compared it to the photo from our office opening last month. 93 people in a space built for success, wearing actual company branded shirts that Paul had designed, looking confident and professional and like we knew what we were doing. 6 months. That's all it took to go from desperate to legitimate. But the real difference wasn't the office or the employee count or the revenue. It was that in the first photo, we looked like survivors. In the second, we looked like builders. Arthur had given me 60 seconds to pack my professional life, thinking that would end me. Instead, those 60 seconds taught me what I was actually worth, not as an employee or an executive or a revenue generator, but as a human being who refused to let cruelty define her value. He'd counted down my execution, and I'd counted up to something he never saw coming. I closed my laptop and looked around my apartment, the same one I'd returned to that first day with a box and no idea what came next. Same walls, same furniture, same life in most ways. But everything had changed because I'd learned that 60 seconds could destroy an empire or build one, depending on who was counting and what they chose to do with the time. Arthur was still trying to understand how 60 seconds had cost him everything. I'd spent 6 months learning that 60 seconds had given me everything that actually mattered. Not the money or the success or the revenge. Just the knowledge that when someone tries to make you small, you can choose to walk away tall. And sometimes, 38 people will stand up and walk with you. Not because they have to, but because they finally can. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.